Hello and welcome to Tech Takeaways, the podcast taking technology's largest challenges and chopping them down into little bite-sized chunks just for you to enjoy at home. So this week is a part 2 episode. So if you've not yet listened to part 1, skip back a week, go watch part 1 and then come back. So I'm your host, as ever, Jason Fitzgerald, and I'm joined by my dynamic co-host, Paul Stringfellow.
That's me.
And we say welcome back to John Fazakerley, head of IT, Liverpool John Lennon Airport.
And that's me.
Yeah, welcome.
That's that guy.
Yeah, that's that guy. So as I say, part 1, John joined us there as well. So if you've not yet listened to it, skip back.
I'm concerned about these Johnny-come-latelys who've not watched last week. If you're just thinking you're getting in for the value of this week, you need to go back. There's 50-odd other episodes you need to go and watch first, and then you can come back to this one.
Absolutely.
We're very demanding of our audience.
We are demanding, but it pays dividends. So
Yes.
so off we go. This episode is all around incident response, and we feel that we wanted to do this episode because of the recent CrowdStrike issues. There's been some incidents in the world of IT recently. So we wanted to touch on that and really kind of reflect on what have those incidents taught us. What have we taken from them? What did we see? How did we experience them? And I think that we three probably saw that experience in different ways.
Yes.
Where
We luckily saw it from a distance.
We saw it from a distance. Yeah, we saw the Reddit write up with quite a lot of angry posts.
Reddit rage.
Reddit rage. Yeah, exactly. So where do we want to start with this, John? What did you feel about the recent incidents?
My first thought is, why is my phone ringing at 6 a.m. in the morning?
Yeah.
So that was my initial thought. But it's all right because my daughter was already up, so I was at least awake for it. So I think open, hold my hand up. We've got CrowdStrike at the airport. We were affected during the incident. However, we didn't know that was the issue at the time. We just had a lot of machines not behaving themselves.
Yeah.
But fortunately, within 45 minutes, we figured out it was CrowdStrike, and then obviously it became a much wider issue. And then effectively we just spent the day trying to remediate as best we could at the airport without impacting operations.
So day in the life of the head of IT.
Yeah.
Starts at 6 o'clock, phone's ringing.
Yeah.
Sheer panic on the other end.
Yeah, I'll be quite honest, the sheer panic was purely, oh my word, what have we done? What IT change have we done? And it was actually a Friday morning.
Yeah.
And we have, my hard and fast rule is no change Friday.
Yeah,
so
weekend preservation.
Thursday is a change day. What could we have changed? So going through my brains is, what did I do yesterday? What did we change yesterday? We did change a password for a server. I remember that. I was like, oh, I can't believe that's broke the world. So then, my thought moved to Windows updates. Damn you, Microsoft, releasing something that doesn't work. And then I was like, no, it can't be that because we uninstalled the recent updates. That didn't work. And then, I'll be quite honest, a good search of social media, and there were many people having a similar issue. Our minds went to CrowdStrike because we're like, well, that's on all the computers.
Yeah.
And we hit bingo. Everyone else was having the same problem.
Yeah.
And is that actually, so, because we were talking about this, and obviously we checked with John before the episode. He was okay to talk about this because as somebody who heads IT at critical infrastructure, these conversations can be sensitive. But I mean, just out of interest, is that kind of, so we want to talk more broadly about the incident response process. So actually, is that one of the things that, because it's interesting you talked there about, let's go and find out what the problem is. So is that part of initial discovery is, okay, we've got this issue here, unless it's blatantly obvious, the data center's on fire, it's probably that. Is that kind of an initial step? You've got some places where you will go to try and discover what's causing the issue.
Yeah, because I think, although, we are critical infrastructure, we're like many other companies. We use products that hundreds of thousands of other people use. So quite often, if we're having a problem, our first thing to check is, well, are we the only ones?
Yeah.
Because often let someone else do the legwork, tell us how to fix it, and that. So so not all the time, but when it's such a prolific problem that's affecting, or it was literally affecting all our Windows machines, we straight away were beginning to think, this can't just be us, can it? And that's when, we discovered it wasn't just us.
And is that part of the process? Because I think that's really interesting. Because I think the obvious thing a lot of the time is that we leap in with, we must go fix this. We must go and try and deal with this problem. But actually, is that a useful tip to say, whoa, just take a minute. Let's just step back from this incident and understand, is this a bigger problem?
Yeah, it is. When we're dealing with issues that come through our service desk, the number one thing before you do anything is understand what the problem is. So an end user might report a problem in one way because that's how they see the problem. The end user is unlikely to tell you what they think that the fix is, or a lot of them will. Fix my PC, it's got to be this kind of thing. But that's step one. Understand fundamentally root cause, what is causing this problem. Because until you know that, you're just fighting. You could do 100 attempts of a fix and none of them work because you're not actually addressing the root problem. And I suppose that was the issue very early on Friday, in that the impact was seen straight away, but the root cause wasn't understood by anyone initially. There was a couple of indicators, and we saw some of the indicators. Blue screen of death is obviously a good indicator that something's not quite right, but that doesn't tell us how to go about fixing that problem. We need to understand a little bit more about it. I did exactly what you did. I was online researching probably 6:30, 6:45, what's going on, kind of thing, because around the same time there was some confusion. I saw it firsthand. A couple of news outlets confusing the CrowdStrike issue with an Azure region outage, and kind of merging the two and saying CrowdStrike has caused Azure and Microsoft 365 to go down. And that wasn't the case. These two just happened quite close together. And it being misreported essentially. So, obviously then that spares a little bit of panic to say, well, I use Microsoft 365. Is my PC going to be offline as well? And it's that. But you've got to pull your information from everywhere. Speak to people, get online.
Yeah, I think just a couple of things to say on that. My first thing whenever it says, at the airport stuff must happen, how do you react to it? In this instance, I didn't because it was too early. But my first thing is go and put the kettle on. Yeah. People laugh at that. But it gives you time to make a cup of tea, cup of coffee, whatever your tipple is, and just relax. And as important as the problem is, as wide-ranging as the problem is, give yourself time to actually think about things rather than just react, especially 6 o'clock in the morning and get a phone call. Normally I'm asleep at that time. I'm not the greatest when I've just woken up. So it's get a cup of tea, like you say, look, try and identify what the root cause is rather than just reacting by trying to fix something, because you might do 100 fixes and a couple of them might work, but you can't go back and find. So yeah, just take time to find out what the actual problem is. Have a cup of tea, slow down, and try and analyze. And like we were saying about, do we go wider when there's an incident? Do we just look within ourselves, or do we straight away go, right, is everyone having this problem? It's a bit like if you have a power cut at your house, do you instantly start ringing the electrician, or do you see if next door I've got a power cut too? That's the one, to it.
It's like assessing the impact, isn't it? Yeah. What's okay, so we're offline. What else is offline? In an airport, the impact, when we talk about cyber issues, I think an airport is definitely different because it is so public facing.
Yeah.
If we look at a typical business suffering a cyber incident, or any kind of incident, doesn't have to be a cyber incident, any kind of incident, it's shielded from the outside. It's often dealt with internally, and systems come back online, and very rarely do people find out. But when it's an airport, it's obvious straight away because the queues start to pile up. The holiday makers queuing up outside, and there's anxiety there, and there's probably added pressures on you guys during those type of incidents, because if you walk around your place of work, there's people with sombreros on wanting to go on holiday, they can't.
Well, I think it's always like at first, if you had to listen to the news, you would have just thought it was an airport problem, because that's what the news will report on, various airports having issues. But it's because airports are so operationally efficient that as soon as that cog stops turning,
Yeah.
It's massive. Everyone's already full of anxiety because they're traveling. We all are, even myself who works in an airport. And it feels like, news reporters and that are literally waiting there just for there to be a problem. And all of a sudden, like you say, that's the news. The first thing that hits the news is there's a problem at an airport. And obviously the problem was much wider than that. But you're absolutely right. Our priority is to try and get things going again so we can get those cogs turning again. So, flights can go off on time and people can enjoy the holidays, whether they've got a sombrero or not.
So, nobody brings them donkeys back anymore. But,
No.
But so, I mean, in terms of kind of how you mobilise, then, so you've done your piece of work, you've made a brew, you've looked at it and gone, okay, this is where we think the problem. So in this case, it was CrowdStrike, but wherever the problem is. So how do you then mobilise response to that? What's kind of the next step?
Yeah, so looking at what the approach is. So this specific example involved physically going to every single machine that was affected, which often isn't the case. We can normally do some clever IT remote stuff, but this was old school, proper IT.
Hands-on keyboards.
Hands-on, touching keyboards, seeing people, things like social interaction. It was shocking.
All the things we did get in IT to do.
Exactly. So quickly decided that was the approach. There was no way around it. We couldn't sit there coding a solution. So essentially, we just split up across the airport.
Yeah.
We communicated via the Teams chat, what the fix was, any questions and stuff, and essentially just went around as quick as we could to individual PCs, resolving, but also, rightly so, prioritising. So, go back to Jane in accounts from a previous episode, I think I said, it's important she can get those invoices out, but it's probably more important that, passengers can flow through x-rays and booking systems and, gates open when they go to them, etc. And car park barriers lift, etc., etc. So it's about prioritising those systems and just getting out there and doing it.
Yeah. Well, I suppose because you were talking before we recorded about kind of you'd done, I think, a couple of tabletop exercises in the last 6 months or so.
I'm keen to hear about this.
And I think things like that are great in terms of it gives you some idea of how well your process works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
But it sounds like with something like this, I think the way you're describing it is, I guess those plans need to be pretty fluid though, because it's very difficult to, we talked on the last episode about kind of pandemic response.
Yeah.
But in cases like this, it's very difficult to plan for potentially this specific thing happens, it knocks out all the PCs, and this is the way we would go and fix it. So how fluid are those plans? Do they just exist within kind of a framework of roughly this kind of thing, or do you have some specific stuff as well?
Yeah, so it's a framework, but we try not to be too specific, because you rightly say, we try and work with the first part of your sentence, which, right, all the PCs are off, what are you going to do? Because if we start going down there, all the PCs are off, and we manually need to go to each file, each computer, and go into the command prompt and type delete, and we just leave that part out of it. So in the desktop exercise I've done recently, my sort of thought I put forward was, right, for whatever reason, cyber incident, CrowdStrike, whatever it is, all the PCs have gone off. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And I think that's the best type of desktop exercise, where you imagine worst case scenario without specifics. Because like you say, we could practice a specific incident where, all computers that, are made by a certain manufacturer go off or whatever. It's just best to practice broader incidents with maximum impact, because then we're prepared for the worst. And I think one of my things I say is, the best thing to do, what's the manual process?
Yeah.
If you haven't, imagine we can't get these PCs back on for days, which we got them on fairly quickly, it was fine. But always prepare for the worst case scenario.
Well, it's interesting you talked as well about the kind of, from a broader operational point of view, that actually those, you check-in desks, etc., there were these kind of fail-over manual processes that says, so, and I think that's useful as well in understanding that these kind of recovery incident response plans aren't just about IT. There's
Absolutely
a whole
not.
bunch of other people, particularly as Jason said, in this thing where you've got this customer facing, how am I going to deal with that going forward?
Yeah, and that's something I'd always preach, I guess, to the senior management team, executive team, board, is they'll often go, right, John, they'd say, for instance, cyber attack, how are you going to make sure everyone's getting out on time?
Yeah.
And hands up, I'd say, well, I'll be too busy trying to fix the cyber attack. It's up to the rest of the airport, the operations, to have their plans in place, manually or otherwise, of how to allow us to respond to that incident, to try and fix the incident like they did on Friday, to get those passengers out on time.
Yeah, so I don't think enough businesses do those exercises into the detail that is needed. A lot of companies will have an incident response plan, and then they'll keep it online, SharePoint online, or they'll keep it on their computer system.
Exactly.
And say, what's step one? Step one is we go to the playbook, and where's that stored? On the PC. Okay, the PC that no one can get access to. Oh yeah, did we print it out? No. Okay, well there we go. So that playbook's null and void now. What are we going to do next, kind of thing? But it for me, that this is all about business risk, right? So let's take a simple example of a pharmacy. So pharmacies rely on technology to speed up that dispensary process. Person comes in, got a prescription, they dispense the medication out. There's always a paper process to that. So we're leveraging technology there to speed up the process because it's faster than writing it all out by hand. But if you need to, you can write it all out by hand. Okay, and I think I'm not saying that we've become too reliant on technology, but I think businesses in general have almost become too reliant on technology that when it goes wrong, it's sheer panic. It's how do we now go through this process? I mean, I saw a different airport that had gone back to essentially writing out on a big wall the flight times. And that was someone's job for the day. While the systems came back online, they had an eraser in one hand, a pen in the other, and they were literally updating flight times, gates, all that kind of stuff with a walkie-talkie. Where's this flight coming from? And that's a really good process. It mitigates the risk there. Whereas if that was no, we rely on a technology and everything's electronic, they're pretty stuck.
Yeah, and we've got like a fantastic operations team. And although I was busy with my head behind computers and all sorts that day, essentially everyone put the high vis on, got out into the terminal, and we're just doing exactly that, helping passengers, know where to go. Because even though, to be honest, the majority of everything was working, there was that, as soon as something's on BBC News, people are getting, the breaking news alert on the phone, whatever, people were even more nervous than normal. So yeah, people just got out there reassuring people and making sure they got out on time.
Well, maybe because I'm aware kind of the time and we're coming to the end of this episode. So I mean, how do you take something like this? Because I think with incidents, it's important that we learn from them. So what's kind of your process? How do you take an incident, whether it's this one or something else? What's the process you guys have to figure out what is it we can learn from this?
Yeah, so the first thing I think is, no matter what the incident, let it fester for a bit.
Yeah.
Don't meet the next day and say, right, let's have a wash up. What can we improve on? So a week or so later, we'll meet as an IT team and go, right, what can we learn from this? What can we change?
Yeah.
We possibly can't stop the incidents, but how did we react to it? Could we have reacted better? What would have made, and essentially what would have helped us remediate quicker? What would have been helpful should this happen or something similar again? And then also meet as a wider business, as a whole business, because obviously there'll be an IT response. We'll concentrate on fixing things, getting things back to normal. But also as a wider, in this case, airport, how can we in future incidents, like you say, maybe get whiteboards out or whatever, and how can we improve that recovery process for the passenger? So there's an IT element to sit on after a week or two, and also an operational. There's obviously post-incidents, there's still some things coming out of it. So we want to make sure to capture all them rather than doing an initial reaction like some may do.
Yeah, because I think it's very easy to run around and go, oh, we should do this, we shouldn't use CrowdStrike, or, oh, don't ever use Azure again, and even if you take that, it's so much easier to say than do, the cost of change, or should we, well, maybe we don't just run CrowdStrike, we run something else on half the machines. Well, there's all of the kind of, and it's very easy to kind of just jump into those, and it almost sounds like actually maybe the best advice with both of these at both ends of that incident is just take a minute, put the kettle on, just hang on a sec.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose if I was looking for a top tech takeaway with this, I mean, would that be, in terms of incident response, would that be your takeaway?
Yeah, I think personally, I'm always told in personal and work life, I'm too relaxed if there's a stressful situation going on. I think this was pretty much my pose on Friday while we were dealing with the incident. But yeah, to just relax. I mean, tech takeaway is just think about things, don't rush into things. I'm no psychologist, but often our brain needs time to process these things before we come to a logical conclusion. I think the initial reaction sometimes, although can be good-natured, is often too hot-headed, maybe not the right one. Have a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee, take your time, make a plan, and act on it.
I mean, that sounds like almost the best way to end that we've ever had.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to end. Thanks, John. Cheers, Stringy.
Thanks, John.
So I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you've not yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button below. We're available in homes of all good podcasts. See you next week.